For this week's project, we're going to be making a drawing that, in a lot of ways, to me, feels sort of like a collage. We're going to be combining different symbolic things representing us and our identity. So I started off with a puppy drawing a representing my family, which is obviously very significant to me. My son has always been very attached to his puppy, and I have always loved dogs as well. And so that loyalty, the connection, all of that works in the dog imagery. I drew sort of my version of Keith Haring's best buddies picture, representing friends, which have been very important in my life. I drew musical notes and a TV because pop culture, music are very important to me. And you should put what's meaningful to you, but I would say the strategy should be sketching first with pencil and trying to make things that are symbolic and symbols that work on multiple levels. And then I'm outlining with Sharpie, I color with crayons. You, of course, have your choice of media for this, but try to make those symbols work together in a unified composition. Try to get everything sort of connected. Make sure you're using the full space on your page. I try to have one symbol run into and sort of dripping off of another. So I've got like the paint dripping from my musical notes. I try to make sure that the symbols sort of collide and overlap, and that helps to create unity within my composition. When I'm coloring, one of the things I really like about crayons is my ability to sort of shade, add value. I press harder sort of around the edges, let it get lighter in the middle, which helps to add a little bit of dimension to these. It makes it a little bit more 3D because of the fact that things closer to us are going to look a little bit lighter. And by pressing harder and getting those darker, almost shadows around the edges, again, that adds just a little bit of volume or a suggestion of three dimensions to it. After I've drawn everything and I've colored in my shapes with crayons, I start to look at the negative space. In art, we have two types of space: the positive space, the shapes that we're drawing, and the negative space being the shapes or the space around the shapes that we've drawn. Both parts are equally important in our project. So I want to make sure that I'm thinking about both the positive and the negative space, making both the best they can be. I want to have some contrast, so I'm using a different material in the negative space. I'm also using I'm using patterns, and just like anything else that I'm putting into my work, I want the patterns to sort of serve multiple functions. So on the one hand, the patterns do just create a little bit of contrast because of the different medium. By coloring in all of the space, it makes it feel more full. But also thinking about what lines and shapes and imagery I put into the pattern can have significance. So I'm using that repetition of circular lines to sort of go along with, I think of it like sound waves resonating off of something, or like the ripple effect, sort of the way that things can be sort of connected and affect other things. So I have colors that sort of bleed one into the other. So I've got purple going into blue, going into green, going into yellow. I get capture the full color spectrum in there. I would encourage you, as you're thinking about how you combine all of these different elements within your work, within your composition, think about how they can represent things and ideas that are meaningful to you in a less literal sense. Think about a little bit of visual metaphor, if you will. Because one of the things that's really great about visual art is the way that you can have sort of multiple layers of meaning and multiple ways that people will connect with and understand the piece. And people tend to engage more and appreciate more if there's more for them to discover and more connections for them to make. And just the other thing is, like, I know for myself, when I start to see something that maybe wasn't immediately obvious, it makes me feel clever as a viewer for sort of piecing it together. And then it makes me appreciate that artwork and that artist more because they make me feel clever for having pieced something together. Now, there's an almost infinite number of ways you could do this, but for this project, make sure you are thinking about different dimensions, different aspects of your personal identity, and you are trying to create a work of art that combines sort of a mashup of those different dimensions of who you are You have your choice of media and how you identify and what different things are personally significant to you. It's very, very open ended. Just make sure you're thinking about how you can apply those different techniques to make it visually appealing as well as personally meaningful. So think about the composition, the way that you are layering different things and trying to unify all those different elements. Make sure you're thinking about scale and proportion and where you're placing all the different elements around the composition. But have fun with it. Just make sure, however you choose to go about it, do your best work.